Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a fascinating case study in sports science and game strategy, how artificial time constraints, specifically minutes caps, can completely disrupt peak athletic performance. When elite athletes return from an injury, they often face these really strict, medically mandated limits. But how does that actually impact the natural flow of a game? Well, let's find out. Just 3 minutes. That was the rigid constraint placed on Indiana Fever basketball star Caitlin Clark during her highly anticipated return game against the Los Angeles Sparks. Imagine trying to find your rhythm in a high-stakes, ridiculously fast-paced professional basketball game when you're literally only allowed to play in fragmented 3-minute shifts at a time. Section 1. Return with the cap. Getting back on the court after resting an injury is one thing, but doing it under a strict stopwatch, that creates an incredibly difficult challenge. Before this back injury, which actually flared up originally on June 24th in a super tough matchup against Phoenix, Clark was just dominating. We're talking impressive season averages of 21.2 points and 8.2 assists. But slap a strict minutes cap on her for just 16 total minutes of play, you get a mere 9 points and 3 assists. It's like night and day. That disjointed pace completely blunted her usual offensive firepower. And honestly, the physical reality behind those depressed numbers was grueling. It wasn't just a lack of scoring. The restricted shifts led to Clark shooting just 4 of 12 from the field and committing 4 turnovers. But here's the absolute craziest detail. Between those brief 3-minute shifts, she was constantly leaving the bench just to keep her back loose. She wasn't just managing the game out there. She was actively managing her physical body on the sidelines, trying her best to prevent her back from stiffening up while she waited to get put back in. Section 2. Breaking the game flow. Because the effect of a minutes cap isn't just physical. The psychological and rhythmic disruption caused by forced, fragmented playing windows is absolutely massive. This deep frustration was perfectly captured by Clark herself. She admitted, "It's really hard to get into a flow. I didn't get to have a feel for the game as I usually do." For an elite offensive basketball player, rhythm is literally everything. When you're getting subbed out every 3 minutes, that natural ebb and flow, that intuitive feel for the defense, it just gets completely shattered. But we've got to look at the other side of the coin here. While the player feels the intense mental frustration of lacking flow, the coach has to focus strictly on physical necessity. Fever coach Stephanie White noted it's going to take some time to build endurance. She wisely pointed out that opposing teams pressure at 94 feet, meaning relentless full-court defense. You have to be absolutely sure a player recovering from a back issue can physically withstand that kind of grueling end-to-end pressure before letting them play their usual heavy minutes. Now, as Clark pointed out, she had been doing some really hard workouts while injured, and her body responded well. But a true game environment, that's a competitive setting that simply cannot be perfectly replicated in practice. The real-time adaptation, the pure adrenaline, the chaotic physical demands, you just don't know how a recovering body will react until you are actually thrust back into that live fire. Section 3. The team ripple effect. Restricting and resting your star players doesn't happen in a vacuum. It destabilizes the entire team's dynamics. You can see how the consequences just cascaded down the entire roster for the Fever that night. First, center Aliyah Boston sat out the game entirely to rest a nagging leg injury, which completely removed her 17.1 points and 8.6 rebounds from the lineup. Guard Kelsey Mitchell suddenly had to shoulder the load, scoring an impressive 29 points. But the disjointed lineup really took its toll. The LA Sparks easily capitalized on this destabilized roster, shooting a blistering 51% and hanging 106 points on them to win the game. And this quote from Kelsey Mitchell really drives that last point home. Despite her own fantastic 29-point offensive performance, she was clearly frustrated by the lack of cohesion on the other side of the floor, bluntly stating, defensively, it kind of was just ugly. When you combine a rigid minutes restriction on your starting point guard with completely resting your star center, the defensive communication, the rotations, the overall synergy, it all suffers immensely. Section 4. Balancing health and competition. This is exactly where we see the natural tension between a player's fierce competitive drive and a sports franchise's long-term medical strategy. So it begs a pretty crucial question. Who actually makes the final call on playing time? When the star player wants to play, and the coach really wants to win the game tonight, who dictates the minutes cap? Well, there's a very clear hierarchy here. The Fever medical staff holds the ultimate authority over minutes, not the coach, not the player. These caps and sit-outs are purely precautionary moves to prevent strain from back-to-back games for players dealing with injuries. And importantly, the medical schedule dictates the rest.
Absolutely nothing else. For context, Clark's injury initially flared up during a physical altercation involving a penalized flagrant foul from Phoenix's Alyssa Thomas back on June 24th. But Coach White confirmed that the decision to rest Clark for the subsequent game against Phoenix was strictly a medical call, completely unrelated to that past physical altercation. It's impartial medical math, plain and simple.
But hey, that medical math brings some real optimism. By carefully resting during that Phoenix game, Clark gained some absolutely crucial recovery time. Now, the strategy is all about safely scaling back up, with Clark expressing genuine optimism that she can safely increase her playing time to a target of 25 minutes for their upcoming matchup against the Las Vegas Aces. Ultimately, it all boils down to the core friction of professional sports, perfectly encapsulated by Clark herself. I'm such a competitor, I think I can play more, but that can sometimes get you in trouble. That right there is the undeniable tension, the internal, unrelenting drive of an elite athlete going head-to-head with the biological realities of physical recovery. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to think about this. How do professional sports teams accurately measure the trade-off between securing a single win today and preserving a franchise star for tomorrow? It is a highly complex, incredibly high-stakes balancing act in professional sports medicine and game strategy, and there are rarely easy answers. Keep this in mind the next time you see a star player unexpectedly sitting on the bench. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll catch you next time.